On September 22, 2025, the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority, HISA, issued a public notice that stunned the horse racing community. The announcement declared that veteran jockey Paco Lopez was being placed under an immediate 6-month suspension for repeated violations tied to the use of the riding crop. The ruling was swift, uncompromising, and, in the view of many industry insiders, deeply unfair. The Jockeys Guild, the national organization representing professional jockeys across the United States, wasted no time in responding. Their position was clear. While Paco Lopez has made mistakes in the past, the punishment handed down this September is both excessive and disconnected from the reality of his infractions. The Guild labeled the suspension absolutely uncalled for and beyond ludicrous. To understand the intensity of the backlash, one must look at the broader picture. Paco Lopez's past disciplinary issues, the intent behind HISA's creation, the controversial riding crop rules, and the growing influence of outside advocacy groups like PETA in shaping disciplinary actions. Lopez is no stranger to controversy. On December 3, 2024, he rode national law at Parx Racing in Pennsylvania in a race that quickly spiraled into a disturbing spectacle. In a moment of frustration and fear, Lopez lashed out with his riding crop in a way that violated not just the rules of racing, but also the standards of sportsmanship and animal welfare. The Guild does not defend what happened that day. In fact, their statement acknowledges without hesitation that Lopez's actions were wrong. They describe his behavior as stemming from frustration and fear, emotions that do not excuse misconduct, but at least help explain it. After the incident, Lopez worked with his legal counsel, the Guild and HISA itself, to reach an agreed order of conditional reinstatement. This was not a free pass. It came only after Lopez had served a suspension, completed anger management courses, and made financial contributions to both Second Call Thoroughbred Adoption and Placement and the Permanently Disabled Jockeys Fund. He also expressed remorse and accepted accountability for his actions. By January 2025, HISA had deemed him rehabilitated enough to return to racing. At the time, the governing body itself acknowledged that Lopez had satisfied the terms of his reinstatement. Fast forward to September, just 8 months after his return. HISA's new suspension is based not on another violent incident like the one at Parx, but rather on a series of minor riding crop violations. Specifically, the infraction at issue was Lopez's habit of raising his wrist above his helmet while using the crop, a technical violation under HISA's Rule 2280, use of the riding crop. The Guild's position is straightforward. This type of infraction has no correlation whatsoever with the kind of misconduct Lopez displayed in 2024. In other words, there is a world of difference between excessive or abusive use of the crop, which rightly deserves punishment, and a jockey slightly elevating his wrist above his helmet line, a gesture that does not endanger horses or riders. Yet HISA bundled these technicalities together and invoked a 6-month suspension, treating Lopez's relatively minor crop infractions as though they were part of the same behavioral continuum as the Parx incident. The Guild views this as a categorical error, an unjust escalation of punishment that ignores context, proportionality, and common sense. To fully grasp the outrage, one must examine the rules themselves. Rule 2280, Use of the riding crop. This rule establishes how and when jockeys may use the crop during a race. Among its restrictions, jockeys cannot raise their wrist above the level of their helmet while striking. Rule 2282, Riding crop violations and penalties. This rule outlines penalties for various infractions, from excessive strikes to technical violations. The Guild has long criticized these penalties as draconian, arbitrary, and disproportionate. For example, raising the wrist above helmet height, a gesture that has no proven link to horse injury, jockey safety, or betting integrity, can be treated under Rule 2282B as though it were a significant offense. The Guild argues that such technicalities should instead fall under Rule 8200B, which gives stewards discretion to issue appropriate, measured penalties. The principle at stake is simple. Punishment must fit the crime. By treating every technical infraction as though it were an act of cruelty or cheating, HISA undermines its own credibility. The role of PETA and outside pressure. Perhaps the most incendiary element of the Lopez case is the role of outside organizations, most notably PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. After Lopez's latest crop violations, PETA filed a complaint with HISA demanding action. According to their own public statements, they proudly take credit for triggering his suspension. For the Guild, this is intolerable. While animal welfare must be a central concern in horse racing, the Guild warns against letting activist groups dictate policy or disciplinary measures. PETA's well-documented hostility to horse racing as a sport means their influence is not neutral. Allowing them to drive disciplinary action creates a slippery downward slope, as the Guild put it, one that could jeopardize the future of racing itself. In their eyes, disciplinary frameworks must be developed in partnership with industry insiders, jockeys, trainers, owners, breeders, and racing commissions, not outside activists whose ultimate goal may be to abolish the sport altogether. HISA's original purpose versus its current practices. When HISA was created, its stated mission was clear: bring consistency and uniformity to the fragmented patchwork of racing regulations across different states. Before HISA, jockeys could face different rules at different racetracks, leading to confusion and uneven enforcement. The Guild initially supported this mission. Indeed, there have been positive outcomes. HISA has worked with the Guild on issues like mental health awareness for jockeys and improving medical standards at racetracks. These collaborations show that when HISA and industry stakeholders cooperate, progress can be made. But the Guild argues that the Lopez suspension demonstrates how far HISA has strayed from its founding purpose. Instead of working with industry participants to create fair rules, HISA has begun imposing penalties from above, often at the urging of outside groups. The result is a regulatory body that feels punitive rather than cooperative, heavy-handed rather than fair. Why does the suspension matter beyond Paco Lopez? At first glance, one might see Lopez's suspension as an isolated disciplinary matter, but the Guild stresses that it has far-reaching implications. 1. Precedent setting. If HISA can impose a 6-month suspension for a technical crop violation, what prevents them from issuing equally disproportionate penalties in the future? 2. Chilling effect on jockeys. Riders may begin to feel they are racing under a microscope, where even the smallest technical misstep could end their careers. This creates an environment of fear, not professionalism. 3. Erosion of trust. If jockeys feel HISA is more interested in appeasing activists than in protecting the sport, trust in the governing body will collapse. 4. Public perception. To the casual fan, headlines about a jockey suspended for crop misuse reinforce the idea that horse racing is cruel and abusive. In reality, many infractions are technicalities that have nothing to do with animal harm. The Guild is not calling for the abolition of crop rules altogether. Instead, it advocates for a more nuanced, collaborative approach, such as steward discretion. Allow racetrack stewards who understand the nuances of each race to determine penalties for technical infractions. Proportional penalties. Reserve severe suspensions for cases of actual abuse, cruelty, or reckless endangerment, not wrist position. Collaborative rulemaking. Include jockeys and other industry professionals in the rulemaking process, ensuring that regulations reflect the realities of the sport. Focus on true integrity threats. Prioritize catching cheaters, drug violators, and others who undermine the fairness of competition, rather than nitpicking minor crop techniques. In closing, the Guild's message is resolute. They stand with Paco Lopez. Not because he is blameless, he is not, but because the punishment handed down is grossly disproportionate to the offense. The Guild pledges to continue fighting HISA's unfair and unreasonable rules and to advocate for reforms that protect both human and equine athletes while also preserving the integrity of the sport. The Lopez case, then, is not just about one jockey. It is about the future of horse racing in America, who gets to make the rules, how punishments are determined, and whether the sport can balance animal welfare with the realities of competition. The industry stands at a crossroads. The path it chooses will determine whether horse racing remains a vibrant sport with professional integrity or whether it is slowly strangled by overregulation and outside interference.